Hey everybody, welcome back to City Church OTR's podcast. This is our second episode of our series where we're getting to know us and our church. We're going to start talking about our values, and we actually have 4 values. They are family, presence, mission, and formation. And so here, I know we talked a little bit about this in our last podcast. We probably spent a couple minutes on it, but we're going to give it a little bit more time. We're going to talk about family. And I know that is all an important word, obviously to our culture and to us, but I think that we have a unique spin on it, and I know it's the number one for a reason, or as far as the list goes. So Chris, I'd love to hear if you were, we are telling people that don't know anything about our church, why is family one of our 4 values?
Yeah, well, I think it is. I mean, you said that it is probably the one that everything flows out of. If everything can be done out of the context of family, and when we say family, even it's not nuclear family. We're big fans of nuclear family, but it's friends that become like family. It's that like covenant, gritty relationship where I'll fight with you, but I'll fight for you even harder. And if you only do one of those things, it's not that true gritty relationship. So when I think of family, or when we even have planned a church around it, it's like the friends that become closer than, normal. It's the family that goes deep. It's what's mission look like if it's not in the context of those close relationships.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear your take, Tyler, because as you said, when we were getting to know you, you're single. And so a lot of people would, I think, even say, well, you don't even have family. So like, what do you mean? How can family be...
I have a cat, Josh.
That's true.
No, well, that's huge, and I would say a big reality to me. And gosh, I have so many thoughts about this. Is that Jesus himself seems to have started a new kind of family. Jesus himself, like me, was also a single person, but also when confronted by people saying, "Hey, your mom and your brothers are waiting out here. They have something to say to you," he says, "Who are my brother and my brothers, if not the folks that are doing my will?" By which he means those that are following my path. So when I think about family, even from a scriptural perspective, I mean, it's easy for me to get on a soapbox at some churches that I think only organize around the nuclear family. And again, I love it. Love kiddos, was a children's librarian. It's a beautiful image. I'm just not sure it's Jesus's full image of what family is. And I think there's so much that people miss out on when their church sells a version of family that's merely come to your church so you can meet a spouse, so you can finally have a family, instead of saying this church instead can be family and be the safe place, the encouraging place, the motivating place from which you live out your mission and vocation in the world. So in terms of, do I have a family? I think I do in a spiritual sense in the church. And then it's, a huge part of what we're hoping to build together, a kind of church that could be safe. Not just for me selfishly, but for other single or married or younger or older. Anybody. To find family at our church would be a huge hope of ours.
Yeah, I know family for me was a massive idol. Growing up, I had dreams of getting married and kids and the white fence, and then that's it. Then that was pinnacle of life. And so I definitely had some moments in my life where that shifted, where I realized that's not the only goal. And so I know, Chris, you had a moment in Vegas, right? Tell me about when family kind of took on a new definition for you.
Yeah, so we were on the same road trip. It was right after college, did this long 7 22-year-old guys living in a van.
You should have smelled the van.
I did smell the van. I think I still smell the van when I have a bad night. And but we showed up. And this is what was crazy. We showed up in Las Vegas, and we were told that we were going to go to some Bible study and help out with something. And it turned out to be this crazy church, which is the church that, we both worked at. I got to lead for 2 years. And I remember we go to some crazy worship night. The presence of God is there. It's like nothing I'd ever experienced at that time. And then and this is probably part of why the presence of God was there, because we went to In-N-Out.
That makes sense.
After that. and we're watching this ragtag group of, 20 or 30 somethings. And one of them has one arm and was a former drug dealer. The other one was just sleeved up and tattoos. And then I met like a really good looking white guy that had a master's degree in Bible. And there was a Hispanic girl that was leading worship. And we just sat there. I mean, I don't think we talked much, but I was listening. And this wasn't even like the leadership team of the church, but they were seeing like almost a mini revival on campus. They were praying for people and they were getting healed. And I watched them interact, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anybody actually like care for one another, and I've never seen a group of people that is more unfit to like become friends.
Yeah.
Because you had former drug dealers with people that just graduated with their masters, like eating and praying and seeking things together. And honestly, I had no chance of not going back to Vegas after encountering that because I knew that that was some value, but I couldn't have put words to it until like I put an image of like Jeremiah becoming friends with Parker, who was leading worship with Sarah. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah, I think I mean that was it was amazing being there, and I think our culture especially has such, I don't know if twisted might be too strong, but I think a secluded view of family, and I think our culture is in a spot that really needs that redefined. And so I'd love to hear, Tyler, from your view. I know you love kind of looking at like a macro level of things. Like if you were going to prescribe a family to our culture, to over the Rhine, to Cincinnati, like what does that like process look like?
Yeah, so maybe one thought as a place to start is there's an incredible rise in the United States right now, actually, of people living alone. So they can't build enough one-bedroom apartments. I think 1 in 7 people in the United States, if Klinenberg's numbers, he's an NYU sociologist, holds us, 1 in 7 people live alone. Even if people
Wow.
are not married, so in the majority of America is single,
Yeah.
meaning not married.
Right.
So we crossed that threshold in a census a few years ago. So all that to say, in my mind, if I'm thinking cultural trends, there is maybe this growing idea of friends are people I have fun with outside, or they come over for a little bit, but then most of my life and a lot of significant parts of my life happen with me by myself. And gosh, I mean, I lived alone in Kansas City and loved it. I get the appeal. I get
Yeah.
why people want to do that. And it's not even all that like physically living alone is bad. It's just like if that trend towards my single bedroom apartment, me being in control of my life, I make all my own decisions, my opinions are the most important to me. If that trend continues and somehow leaches deeper into your soul, it really can lead to, I mean, just profound loneliness. So no one cares about me. I'm all by myself. Does anyone even give a crap about these deep details in my life? Well, maybe they don't even know about them because you're not around folks. So there's a profound loneliness. And I think over time, it could even lend itself to a bit of a deep-seated selfishness. There is something neat about a group of, again, diverse friends or friends that feel like family that challenge your own opinions a bit. You've got to give a little, take a little. I mean, all just the kind of dynamics that make for healthy friendships that are there that can unseat me or unseat us from being on the throne of our own lives and be like, oh, there's other people's voices I need to consider and opinions I need to consider. And everything in my life doesn't need to be tailored towards my preferences. And so those are the kinds of things, again, when we say like a church that feels like family, it's not, and it's a new kind of family, honestly, in a real sense. It's not that no one in our church can live on their own, or you better not have a 1-bedroom condo.
Or no one can get married, and no one can have kids.
Exactly.
Because that's fine.
Well, that's true.
great,
Yeah.
too.
And I'm probably talking from my own perspective. Yeah. It's not that any of that is wrong. It's just that there is a richer possibility for living and even being formed outside of yourself and being considered a broader world if you would try to live into this vision of a new kind of spiritual family. That, again, we think is what like Jesus modeled when he was here, bringing together a random group of disciples, traveling together, being shaped and formed together. And of course, that group changes the world. It's inspiring.
But don't you think that even that makes us better at family in like the nuclear sense? Like, do you, because you have 2 girls,
Yep.
don't you feel like you're a better dad because you have really close friends that like are willing to call you out on things, or that you actually do get out of your house and hang out with just the bros, or I mean things like
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah, not only making me a better dad, because that, again, to kind of even speak, like it's not even about me. Like I see the impact that it's having on my kids even, and they know that my wife and I are the authority, but like having a broader sense of people that love them, because you guys love the girls and they
So much.
I mean, I'm really thankful they have a lot of people that love them. But I think that broader sense of community, of family, that's not just mom, dad, siblings, I think is going to turn them even into just better, kids and teenagers and adults eventually. And that makes me really excited. And I know I'm obviously bought into this type of family. I think Tyler, you said the other day, like so often, and I thought about this when you're like, people are living alone or even not even families, someone that has kids and a wife, I think it can be really tempting to go, like the only time you see other people is in like a social setting, and we can all turn it on. Like
Yeah.
we can all turn it on,
So
and
true.
that's the best version of ourselves. And which there's a time and place for that. Parties are fun. That's great. But I think inviting people in to not the social setting, to more the family, which kind of gets into the how, like we say family's a value. We hear a little bit about like some of the theology from Jesus and the I don't know, the dream, but like how do we at City Church OTR want to do that? How do we want to help build that? And I mean, Chris, how would you, what are some of the things that we're going to do as a church?
I'm not as avid of a reader as Tyler is, but when I do read, it's often like a spiritual book or leadership. And my favorite author is Patrick Lencioni, and he talks about building like a cohesive team. We've read some of those books because I made you. And but I mean, remember what the basis of a good team is vulnerability based trust. And so I don't think it's possible to have the kind of thing that we're talking about. I mean, we're still learning. Like we've been doing this thing for almost a year together, like in the same city, and we're still learning what family looks like. And the big hurdle that we're coming over is like, how much more can we trust each other, and can we go deeper, and can we be more vulnerable? And so I think, and that's scary to some people. We're not gonna like sit around a circle and say like the worst thing you did this week at City Church OTR, but that is probably a big piece of it. Of like, well, okay, how do we breed deeper trust with one another? And trust means that I might tell you the hard thing, or it might mean that like I just sit with you in the midst of your mess. And I think that's maybe the other thing, and you could probably talk to some of this too, but like we're not afraid of the mess. Like messy is okay as long as it still is a safe place, but don't feel like, and this is the guilt of most Sunday Christians, is like, well, I'll clean up the mess, show up, and then I'll get right back into the fight that we were having when we get in the car to leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, alongside that point, just wanting to jump in, but this idea that folks can share themselves fully, and that we're choosing all the sets of challenges that come with that over other sets of challenges.
Yeah.
So in some schools of thought for how should you do church well, it's like, well, you want to really focus on production value, or you really want to focus on having lots of different programs, because the more types of programs you have, the more types of people will come. And I respect varieties of churches that have made a variety of commitments to those strategies. I'm not dissing any of those strategies. Instead, we've chosen we're just going to do a few things. We're going to gather together on Sunday, and we're going to encourage people to gather together in their homes. We're going to try to tool everything we do towards how do we, again, deepen this trust, grow as a family. But we're hoping that in that focus, there would be the possibility for just there to be fewer distractions, maybe, or other activities that take energy and attention, and instead saying, no, we really mean it. Like, invest in your community. This will be the catalyst for spiritual growth. This is what'll change your life. We aren't going to be as, programmatic or have as much polish. I mean, I think we'll still do a great Sunday service because the theater kid and all of us. I mean, me, but like it'll come out. But
He's not me.
but I think there's even like this broader shift in focus for how we're thinking or structuring church. That means like, let's put our eggs in the family basket, and then that means the problems we're choosing to experience are like, we know we'll probably have more relational friction and relational success. We know we'll probably have higher highs and lower lows in that category. So it's not like, oh, we're choosing this, better, like, totally better way because it's pain-free. It's like, no, we're choosing this way we think's better, and we're embracing the challenges that come with it. And this is how we want to go, and this is how we think people will develop to be more like Jesus.
Can I say, one more thing about that I think, because we've talked a lot, or we've just even mentioned, like, it's probably going to be tougher in some ways. The crazy thing that I think that we've seen, I mean, just if we can be an example, and we mentioned this in the first podcast, we have very little in common. Like, and you mentioned the theater kid. I was too busy playing intramurals in college. You're tall and skinny. I'm not tall, but incredibly muscular. But so if I think our relationship started off with, okay, let's trust each other, and it built over time. I mean, it's taken 10 years, but now we have shared experiences that, despite I couldn't tell you one show that's on Broadway, well, none of them are on right now, COVID, and he might not be able to tell you who got picked first in the NFL draft. So we still don't actually have a lot of the same interests, but we've been on vacation together. Remember that time we were in New York? Do you remember the time that you got let down by that thing? And do you remember when Catherine was going through this and I shared that with you? I mean, those are the things that I think actually makes me really encouraging, because if we can form family, two people that have very little in common, I really am optimistic that the more we just hang out together as a church, as these smaller communities in our living rooms, the more I actually think that we will become like family.
Yeah.
And not to interrupt you again.
Come on.
But to be because what you were saying reminds me, Chris, like one of the things that makes me so passionate about this family piece and about focusing there is that I really do believe that Jesus started church to be a safe place for everyone and for everyone to find belonging. And I think that happens think about the people that Jesus cared about. There's widows, there's, so let's think there's a big nuclear family loss in a widow. There's an orphan. There's a nuclear family loss there. There's, he's talking about immigrants a lot in the Old Testament context, maybe thinking widow, orphan, immigrant, but it's this idea like people that have moved from someplace else, who do you know? And so this idea that God seems to think, man, people that have had, whether it's complex stories as it relates to a nuclear family, so my nuclear family experience has been tough, or man, I'm just moving to a new place and I lost this old community I have, whatever it is, there seems to be this deep sense throughout the pages of Scripture that there needs to be a new family place where everyone can find belonging. And it's precisely these processes of building trust, gathering around the Word, becoming more like Jesus, that it's like, hey, if you do that, even people that are vastly different can really become closely connected. I mean, to me, that's the hopeful image of what a church could be. It's like maybe we've just stumbled into how churches truly can be a place for everyone if the focus is on this kind of trust building, community building aspect.
No, I love that. I mean, you guys answered like all my questions that I was going to ask in that.
We got going.
Yeah, you did. Because I think something I've thought about is like, well, every church has small groups. So like, what's different? And not that we need to be different, not that we need to be better. Again, we talked in our last podcast, like we're not the only church. There are gonna be people that like other churches better than ours.
Sure.
And like that's great. And we love that. But what does make us different, and I think like what you said, which is, and I love what you said, Chris, with you guys not being the same. I think not having all those programs, seeing an example of it, saying, no, we're going to continue to press towards this family. I think that's what maybe can make it different, because there are so many other things that a church can do, should do probably, that they're going to do. But we're saying, no, this is actually the top tier value of ours, and we're going to continue to push people towards that. We're going to continue to push ourselves towards that as a co-pastor. I mean, it's right in your guys's like model with co-pastoring. Like, there's not one leader, and so like even from the top level leadership, it's in a family sense, which I really really love and appreciate, and hope that kind of can translate on Sundays, that can translate in our houses. That hey, this is a process that we're committing to. It's not that we do family better than anyone else, but we're just saying that this is something that we're going to commit to.
Yeah, if we explode in growth and have this crazy building, but we and our people don't feel a sense of like, oh yeah, I'm deeply connected there, that might be fine for other churches, and it legitimately might be fine because that might be the calling. That would be a loss for us. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure that people belong, that we feel like we belong, and that we have good friends.
Absolutely. And again, to kind of wrap this one up with another tip of the hat, like that family being that top tier, it goes perfect with having family that are on mission together, having family that are experiencing the presence of God together, and having a family that's growing and being formed into who Jesus calls us to be, is such a good foundation. And so we're going to end that. We're going to talk about mission here in a little bit, but I know I get inspired and excited when we talk about family, not because it's easy, not because it hasn't been hard for us even sometimes, but because I do believe in the promise that that close of a family that you guys talked about is worth fighting for. So hope that kind of gives you insight into that first value. Make sure to come back. We're going to continue talking about our values as a church.